Yes, it's good to be here and see all of you wonderful people. My name is Saif Pathan, and I'm representing the International Campaign for Justice in Bhopal. All of us over here representing International Campaign for Justice in Bhopal. We are here to represent the survivors of the world's worst industrial disaster, which happened in Bhopal, India, on this very same day, 27 years ago. The survivors are people of great courage, just like you. They have fought for 27 long years for justice against corrupt corporations and indifferent governments. They are the 99%, which has the grit to survive, the defiance to face their persecutors, and the courage to fight back. And the fight is still going on. The Occupy movement has been an inspiration to people all around the world and offers hope that justice will prevail. Thank you for catalyzing the change, and things will change. In today's world, corporations are more powerful than governments. Although we are told that governments and politicians are regulators for our society, it is the corporations who are the real puppet masters. They are the 1% who have risen above the law and routinely violate justice and democracy every single day. The Bhopal disaster is a chilling example of one corporation's criminal acts and its attempts to cover up its wrongdoings. We are here to seek your support and remind the world of the survivors' struggle for justice. On the night of December 2nd, 1984, approximately 40 tons of deadly chemical gas, MIC, leaked from the pesticide factory owned by Union Carbide Corporation in Bhopal. The gas immediately spread to densely populated residential colonies inhabited by ordinary working class people who were sleeping that night. When the deadly gas invaded their homes, they woke up to swollen eyes, coughing and choking. With no prior knowledge of what to do in a gas leak, people ran for their lives. But they could not outrun death. On that night alone, 2,500 people were killed and over 200,000 were injured. Documents unearthed after the gas leak show that Union Carbide plant in India was marked by inadequate maintenance, insufficient attention to safety, and a failure to respond to previous accidents and warnings from workers. Prior to the accident following the death of a fellow employee, the factory workers appealed to the company, asking them to review safety measures, only to be told that there were no safety problems. According to Union Carbide's own safety inspector, its plant in Bhopal did not even meet basic safety standards. Union Carbide's internal documents also reveal that the company knew about the possibility of a massive disaster, but chose to ignore warnings in order to cut costs. In 1989, Union Carbide and the Indian government negotiated a settlement that amounted to a measly $500 per person, per victim, an amount that is paltry even by Indian standards. This compensation wasn't even enough to cover medical expenses of those affected by the disaster, and much of the money did not even receive the victims. But listen to this, occupiers. The Bhopal disaster did not end that night. The Bhopal disaster is still happening. The site of the pesticide factory has not been cleaned up 27 years since then, and is a source of toxic chemicals that continue to contaminate the soil and the groundwater to this very day. Thousands of people in Bhopal are still forced to drink water laced with high levels of mercury and other toxic pollutants. These chemicals have found their way into the wombs of mothers and into the bloods and bones of their children. The incidence of stillbirths, infant mortality, fetal abnormalities in Bhopal is without parallel in the rest of the world. Numerous studies, including by Union Carbide itself, acknowledge the pesticide contamination in the area. In 2001, Union Carbide became a fully owned subsidiary of Dow Chemical Company. And all of us know when a corporation purchases another corporation's assets, it automatically becomes responsible for its liabilities. However, to this day, Dow refuses to clean up the site near the Union Carbide factory, claiming that it bears no responsibility for Bhopal disaster because it happened in 2001 when it did not buy the Union Carbide. Using all its powers, Dow is trying to evade the justice systems in India and in the United States. Dow claims that as an American corporation, it is not answerable to the Indian courts. In the US courts, Dow claims they cannot be held responsible for a disaster that happened in India. In effect, Dow keeps saying that they're above the law. Today, Dow manufactures more than 5,000 different products at 188 sites in 35 different countries around the world. In 2010, the company posted an annual sales of $53.7 billion. For decades, Dow has operated with little or no regard for health of those inside and outside their facilities. In the 1990s, 8,000 people filed a class action lawsuit against Dow for asbestos-related illnesses they incurred while working at Dow plants. Just recently, the family of a deceased worker at Dow's plant in Midland, Michigan was awarded $9 million because the employee died of asbestos exposure. Dow was ordered by the courts to pay $2.2 billion for asbestos-related claims against Union Carbide's plants in Texas and in West Virginia. Dow has been brought to justice in other places in America. The survivors and the victims in Bhopal have a lot of hope and strength and power and will fight until they get their justice too. Dow is scared, they're afraid of the power of Bhopal. Justice in Bhopal will set a legal precedent, not just for them in dealing with all their own other pending lawsuits, but also set a precedent for chemical companies across the world. In India, Dow continues to sell poisonous pesticides that are banned in the US. Although the Bhopal disaster happened thousands of miles from Dewey Square in Boston, the story in Bhopal affects us all. The disaster exemplifies the power of transnational corporations like Dow and Union Carbide, which continue to grow unabated, the lack of support from governments, and the failure of the legal system to adequately hold corporations accountable. As one person aptly put it, we all live in Bhopal, some closer to the gas chambers and to the mass graves, but all of us close enough to be victims. Industrial pollutants are constantly dumped into our streams and rivers, sprayed on our lawns, and disseminate in the air we breathe, whether it be Shell's massive oil spills in Nigeria, or an energy company in Pennsylvania injecting chemicals into the groundwater, or Walmart, America's largest private sector, paying workers in developing countries up to 30% of their country's legal minimum wage. These atrocities occur throughout the world, and the victims are always the ones who are marginalized, whose voices are deliberately silenced and are all too often unheard, the 99%. We stand here today not only to expose their injustices, but also to issue a call to action. By taking part in this, you too can send a message of no more Bhopals, whether it be in the US or abroad. You too can put an end to abuses that arise from relentless pursuit of profit above people. The victims haven't given up, and the fight has not ended. It won't, so long as our collective conscience stirs. Please join us all in the struggle for justice for Bhopal. Thank you. Today with us, we also have one of the survivors from the actual Bhopal disaster, Sanjay Verma. He's traveled all the way from India to come and join us on this 22nd anniversary. Sanjay, can you say a couple of words?
Back in 1984, composition of gases leaked from an American company called Union Carbide and killed about 8 to 10,000 people in the next 72 hours. And so far, so it killed about 8 to 10,000 people in the next 72 hours. And so far, 25,000 plus people have died. And there's another disaster. Union Carbide left the toxic site right after the tragedy. The site hasn't been cleaned up yet. And the toxics lying in and around the factory are contaminating the groundwater. And the people who are living around the site, they are forced to drink contaminated water. We people from Bhopal, we have been fighting for justice for the past 27 years. And today is the 27th anniversary. It's not like we have just been fighting and getting nothing. There have been victories as well. Recently, federal government of India agreed that the groundwater is being contaminated by the toxics lying in and around the factory. So the federal government of India, they came forward and gave some money to the state government so that clean water can be supplied to the people living around the site. So now pipelines are being laid down, and then they recently started supplying clean water to the people living in the affected area. And a few months ago, federal government of India, they came up with like a new package for Bhopal, and new compensation was part of it. But they decided to give out new compensation to the 7% of the victims. They denied new compensation to the 93% victims. There are about 100,000 people who are still chronically ill and still dying. The people who were exposed to gas, they were given about like $500 each, but they have spent much more than that throughout the years for their treatment. Go to Bhopal, you will see hospitals are still full with patients, and even the treatment which is being given to them is not fair. Recently, one of the organizations raided one of the government hospitals, and we found out that they were being given expired medicines. So, we people from Bhopal, we are still fighting for clean water, proper treatment, rehabilitation, and proper compensation. And we need you. Thank you.